Welcome to my first reading vlog. I've kind of wanted to try this for the last few weeks because I've been reading a lot of books that I want to talk about in the midst of reading them, and I don't want to wait for my monthly wrap up at the end of the month. So yeah, it was kind of the middle of the month. It's kind of a weird time to be starting this maybe, but oh well. I have a bunch of books that I'm currently reading that I kind of want to just share a little bit about, and then I'm going to kind of update throughout the week and let you know what I'm thinking about them. The first book that I'm reading, let's just get into it. It's called Seagrass Pier. It is apparently a Christian romance book, which I did not realize when I bought it from the thrift store. I read the beginning part of the book and it sounded so interesting. Or not the beginning part of the book, the beginning part of the back of the book. I don't like to read the entire back of the book because I feel like it gives too much away. Like, they shouldn't share things on here that happen after the first 100 pages, in my opinion. I like to go into my books not knowing a whole lot, so if I read the back, I feel like it ruins it. But this one, the part that actually got me into wanting to read it was, it's about a woman who gets a new heart through a heart transplant, and she starts having dreams and visions of the murder of the person who had the heart before her. She kind of like is getting flashbacks to when this woman was murdered. So that sounded really interesting to me. I knew it was a Christian book, and honestly, I have big troubles with Christian fiction written by women. Every single time there is a Christian fiction book that is written by a woman, there's always a romance involved. And I'm not like anti-romance. I mean, I'm married and I am very happily married, but I feel like in Christian fiction, there's a lot of emphasis put on the fact that life is not perfect unless you have a man in the end. I feel like they never say that Jesus is enough, which is kind of the whole point about Christianity. And I feel like, yeah, I wish that I could find a writer who, you know, like maybe the guy and the girl ended up together like 25% of the time, but 75% of the time they didn't. So you kind of like just never knew. I'm like 99.9% sure that the girl in the story is going to end up with the guy who is apparently helping her look for this murderer. Yeah, so far, like, I'm 99 pages into the book. It's all right. It's decently creepy. Right away, right at the beginning of the book, the murderer breaks into her house. So it's not something I like to read in the evenings. I get creeped out pretty easily, and I know like tonight my husband is going out in the evening, and there's no way I'm going to be reading this book today because I don't want to be creeped out all evening long. So that's one of the books I'm reading. The other one is one that I don't know how to pronounce. I think it's Aquifer. This one surprised me. I found this one on Book Outlet. I don't even know, I was just kind of like browsing. I'd never heard of it before, still have never heard anyone talk about it. It is a dystopian book that part of the book reminds me a lot of The Giver, because the people are not allowed to show any kind of emotion. It's kind of like been bred out of them, and everyone has these dials that kind of start to flicker if they're showing emotion, like negative emotion, positive emotion, any kind of emotion, love, fear, anything. And then if they do show emotion, I think maybe like their memory gets wiped. It's a very interesting concept there. But then also on top of it all, this is in 2250, so like in the future, and there is no water. Like, it doesn't rain anymore. There's one source of fresh water that is kind of like down in the ocean or something, and there's one guy each year. It's the same guy. He's called the Deliverer. He has to go and somehow access the water so that they have enough water for the year. So in this book we follow the Deliverer's son, whose name is Luca, and he will eventually be the Deliverer once his father is no more. And I'm 124 pages into the book so far, and I'm really enjoying it. I can't believe I've never heard of this book before. I don't know where it's all gonna go, but so far it's been really good. I've been highlighting a few things already. And then I have been reading Harry Potter. I wanted to take a little bit of a break for like a week or two before picking up the next book just so they don't kind of like all meld together in my mind. But I was like really having a craving for something like that. So the next book I picked up is, here's the dust jacket, Keeper of the Lost Cities. This is a middle grade book, and it's like decently thick, or so it looks, but the writing is actually really big. So I started this yesterday afternoon, I think, and I'm already 156 pages into the book. It is about a 12-year-old girl who is a telepath. She finds out really quickly that she's not human, even though she's been raised by humans, and the people who are like her have come to find her, and so far it's kind of just her journey there, I guess. I'm kind of proofreading it for my 9-year-old. I think she's going to love it, which is a good thing because I just got a whole bunch more of the books in the series. I think there's like 8 of them out right now. And yeah, so I'm really enjoying this one. I'll probably read more of this one today as well. And then I'm also listening to an audiobook, which is another middle grade book, and it is Nevermore. It is one that I've never heard anything bad about. It's about a girl who is born on the unluckiest day of the year, called Eventide, and because of that she's doomed to die the next Eventide, which I think is like her 12th birthday. And yeah, but then something happens and she doesn't die, but since she's born on the unluckiest day of the year, she gets blamed for all the things that go wrong in her town. Like anything bad that happens to anyone, she's blamed for. And that's what I knew of the story going into it, and I've been listening to it on audio, and so far like all that happens within the first 2 hours of the like 10-ish hour audiobook. And so I'm about halfway through now, and it's just a enjoyable little ride. It kind of reminds me like a little bit of Alice in Wonderland, just like whimsical and fun. So there's just kind of like a little bit of an update on what I'm currently reading, and then I'll check back in a day or two and kind of let you know how things are going. So I did a bit of reading last night and actually got to almost finish Keeper of the Lost Cities, and then I took a little bit of time this morning and finished it. This book is just under 500 pages, 488 pages, and I read it in a little less than 48 hours. So yeah, I don't know, I enjoyed it. It kind of does give me Harry Potter-esque vibes, just with the teenagers and kind of like the magic and the group of friends at school. That part kind of gives me Harry Potter-esque vibes. The main character though is a female, which is a little bit different. And yeah, I really liked it. So it seemed fitting that while I finished this book, I just quickly share a few books that I got that arrived from Book Outlet yesterday, and I finally opened it today. So I have the first and second book in the series already, and then I happened to buy, I don't even know what number these are, book 3, book 4, book 6, and I think book 5's in here too, and book 5. So I'm going to be continuing on with this series. I think there's currently 8 books out right now, and I know my daughter's going to really like this series too. And just going to show you quickly a few other things I got from Book Outlet. I got Us Against You, which is the second book after Beartown. I haven't read Beartown yet, but I'm really curious about it. The whole hockey community kind of thing reminds me a lot of the town that I grew up in, so I think it will be a good book. Yeah, we'll see. So I'm going to find the first one, and then I'm going to read the second one. I also got If I'm Found. This is the second book to the If I Run series, I think it's called. The first one is called If I Run. I read it like a week or 2 ago and really enjoyed it. Read it within like 12 hours, probably like 6 hours. So I wanted to read book 2. Ooh, I also got How to Train Your Dragon for my kids. I'm curious about this book. I've heard that it's nothing like the movie, but everyone that I've heard of really likes the book. And the last one I got from Book Outlet is A Curse So Dark and Lonely. This is a fairy tale retelling. It is, I can't remember even which fairy tale it is, but I do believe that the main character has some kind of illness. So it sounds interesting. I like the kind of like twist on the fairy tale. And then I also bought a couple books from the thrift store. This is Charlotte and Emily, a novel of the Brontes. I don't really know much about the Brontes. I do like Wuthering Heights is so far really the only Bronte novel that I've enjoyed, but I'm curious about this. I don't know if it's actually supposed to be accurate to their family or not, but I'm curious to read it. And then the other thing I found is a Robin Hobb book, City of Dragons. This is apparently volume 3 in the Rain Wilds Chronicles. I don't know, I just know I do want to read some Robin Hobb, so I kind of figured when I see her books in the store, I should just pick them up. I didn't actually read what this is about at all. So yeah, a little bit of books recently. The background behind me is different. We may have got a few bookcases delivered from IKEA yesterday, so I've been working on trying to figure out where books go, and it's going to take me a few days, maybe some weeks, to kind of get it all organized and figure out where we want everything to go. But I will show a clip yet, kind of show what it looked like before, and then hopefully my like after, or maybe it'll just be a in progress photo. We'll see. I just wanted to share a quick little reading update. I did start book 2 in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. This is obviously the dust jacket, and I thought it'd be fitting to use my unicorn bookmark on the unicorn book. So far, I mean, I'm not very far into it, but I'm enjoying it. This is kind of like my evening read because the other book that I'm reading is kind of creepy. And I appreciate the creepiness factor because that's like the only thing that I can say that's positive about this book. I do not like our main character at all. She has 0 flaws according to everyone else in the book, except that she's being stalked by a murderer and keeps like going off on her own, and she moves to this house in the middle of nowhere that takes 20 minutes by boat to get to, and I think like an hour by vehicle. And it also just so happens to be the place where the woman whose heart that she now has worked for her last year of her life. So I mean, I don't know why they think the murderer can't find it. If he was researching her at all, he would know that she had been there. So I'm curious to see where the book goes, but it's not an enjoyable read, but I want to know the ending. So I'm currently 122 pages, like not even quite halfway through it, but I'm hoping to kind of just cruise through this in the next few days. I might read this one a little bit in the evenings, and then after this I'll finish my other book, Aquifer, and then I'm also still listening to Nevermore. I'm like 5% left in the audiobook, so I'm pretty much done it. It reminds me of, I know I said before, it reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. It still does, but it reminds me of like that crossed with Green Glass House, which is another middle grade book. And I'm really enjoying it. I don't like Alice in Wonderland, so I feel bad comparing it to that, but I do like Nevermore. So I'm hoping to kind of like get into the second audiobook as soon as I'm done this one. And yeah, so I'm gonna kind of try to get through this book as soon as possible just to get it over with now. A little reading update. I finished Sea Glass Pier last night. Kind of what I was expecting. It's fairly predictable. The romance aspect always gets to me in Christian books because it's predictable. There was like talk of a double wedding at the end, and I mean, I'm not against happy endings, but does everyone always have to be paired off at the end of every Christian fiction book? Like, it's not realistic, and it bothers me that it seems like the focus is that if you're a woman, life is only great if you have a man. The mystery part of this, like the kind of like stalker murder part where this woman was like having this cell memory of and remembering the murder of the person that had the heart that she has before her. That was very fascinating. I keep forgetting to like research cell memory and like if this is actually a thing. Do people actually have dreams and nightmares from the person that had their, I guess, like organs before? I'm very curious about that. I'm gonna look it up yet. So that part of the book was really good. It's just the other part that felt so predictable, and yeah, I don't know, it frustrates me. I expect more when it's deemed as a Christian book. Like the first half or so of the book, I was like, what, other than they mentioned going to church one time, I was like, what here is Christian about this book? Like, it's almost easier than just to not market a book as a Christian book. There was a little bit more mention of like forgiveness and things at the end, but yeah, I don't know. I think I gave this one like a 3-star on Goodreads, and I'm just going to give this one back to the thrift store, and maybe someone else will enjoy it more than I did. And then other books that I'm currently reading, I'm almost done this one. I'm on page 254 out of about 300, so I have about 50 pages left. Now, I don't know if it's because I was reading Sea Glass Pier, I'm reading this one, and then I'm also reading Keeper of the Lost Cities, and I'm listening to the Nevermore and the second book in that series, which I'm totally forgetting right now, Wondersmith. So I'm listening and reading to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different books this week, and it's kind of a lot. So I kind of feel like I'm forgetting some of the details in here, or I'm getting confused. There's a little bit of overlap like in the way they travel in this book and in the Keeper of the Lost Cities, and I'm not sure if it's not being explained well enough in the writing, because sometimes I'm like, but how did they get from there to there? But I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just because I'm reading too many other books at one time, which is entirely possible. Yeah, so I have like 50 pages more in this. I did find on Book Outlet, this guy has written a few more books that are really cheap on Book Outlet that I might look into getting. I do want to support authors who are lesser known, who are doing a good job, and I have enjoyed a lot about this book. It's hard to say much about it without giving like all of it away, but it's been a very good dystopian book that kind of has some different twists that I haven't read about before. And like I said, so I did finish Nevermore, and I'm on to the second one, which I forget again, is called Wondersmith. There we go. Yeah, so it's like kind of Alice in Wonderland versus like Green Glass House. I'm kind of getting all these different vibes from middle grade books that I've read before, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm curious to see where Wondersmith goes. I'm only like 20% into it, and I don't know if it's just the 2 books in the series or if there's going to be more afterwards. I actually haven't heard of that, or if I haven't looked into it. And then I am still reading Keeper of the Lost Cities book 2, which I forget the name of, Exile. I haven't read any more since yesterday or the day before. I'm still only 56 pages out of 568, so I'm not very far. I'm going to finish this one before I read this, and then possibly also finish listening to Wondersmith, because I feel like there's a lot of things in Wondersmith and this one that are kind of like getting me confused from one to the other. So after I finish this book, I might grab another book off of my TBR cart. We will see what I am in the mood for next. Also, this is a fantasy dystopian book, this is a fantasy book, and Wondersmith and Nevermore are also fantasy, so I've got like 3 different fantasy books going on, different worlds going on at the same time, which is a little much for my brain. But yeah, that's where my reading week has taken me so far. I'm thinking I will probably give this one like a 3.5, 4 stars so far. I mean, the last 50 pages might change that a bit, but yeah, I don't know, like I really want to support authors who I've never heard of before, and just kind of like help promote their works a little bit. This one is very fascinating to me, so we'll see if the last 50 pages work out to be something that's more of a 3.5 star or a 4 or a 4.5 star. Okay, it's Friday, and I kind of want to run these reading vlogs, I think, from Saturday to Friday. I kind of won't be filming much on the weekends because that's kind of when my husband's home, we have family time, and Sunday afternoon I like to spend as much time as possible just reading. So it makes more sense for me to film kind of during the week and then edit it in the weekend. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to just kind of give a little wrap up of what I've been reading. So I did finish Aquifer yesterday. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, kind of as I suspected I would. I think it falls somewhere between a 3.5, 4 star for me. And then I always round up on Goodreads, and so I rated it a 4 star. I still do wish that there would have been a little bit more explanation throughout the story. I feel like, well, after I rate things on Goodreads, I go in and I kind of read other people's reviews of the story, and a lot of people were talking about how they were really confused in the first 50 pages of the story. And I mean, it's a dystopian book that's set about 200 years in the future, and there's definitely fantasy elements. So the first 50 pages, you're learning a lot of new terminology, you're learning about different groups of people. It makes sense to me that the first 50 pages are confusing because it's kind of like information overload. Unfortunately, I feel like the last 50 pages were also kind of confusing. Like, there were times where the characters kind of looked at each other and just knew what they had to do, and I was reading it and I was kind of like, but I don't know what you're supposed to be doing. Like, I wish there would have been just more words explaining to me what was going on. But I did really enjoy the story and a lot about it, so for that reason it was like a 3.5, 4 star for me. In addition, I'm still reading Keeper of the Lost Cities Book 2, Exile. I'm 78 pages into it, so not very far so far. Because I'm also listening to Wondersmith at the same time, I kind of want to try to finish Wondersmith before I get too far into this one, just because there's like a little bit of overlap, and some of the same elements from Wondersmith into Keeper of the Lost Cities, and it can just get a little confusing when you're listening to 2 middle grade fantasy books at the same time. So I'm going to finish listening to Wondersmith, and then I thought I would pick another book to read after. So I don't want a fantasy book, since I've got 2 fantasy books on the go already, and I know quite a few of the books that I'm most excited about here are fantasy, and then I have kind of like my second most excited about books kind of here. I know I'm reading a lot of Agatha Christie in February, so I don't want one of those. I'm not in the mood for like non-fiction. What I'm thinking about reading is If I'm Found. I read If I Run, the first book to the series, a couple weeks ago, and then really enjoyed it, so I wanted to read If I'm Found. This is a trilogy. The last book is called, I have no idea what it's called. So it's If I Run, If I'm Found, If I Live is the third book, which I don't own. So it's about a woman who she knows she's going to be blamed for a murder that wasn't her fault. And so in the first book, she's just on the run. And I really enjoyed the book because I kind of like have a little bit of a con artist mind. I like to kind of think of different ways that people can get out of different situations, and that's what a lot of that book was. I'm not sure where If I'm Found goes in the story. It is a Christian fiction series by Terry Blackstock. So I am afraid that it will have, the third book will have a wrap up where these two people end up together, because that's how it always happens. But it did not happen in the first book, and I'm assuming it won't happen in the second book. So I can enjoy these two books. I don't know why, like, I'm not against people ending up together, but I just don't like the predictability that it happens in every single book. And if it does not happen in the third book, I am going to be so excited. But like, there's 0% that's going to happen. So yeah, so I'm probably gonna pick up this one, read this one, and listen to Wondersmith over the weekend. And then once I'm done listening to Wondersmith, then I'll continue on with this book. But yeah, that's kind of my plan for the weekend. And I got a couple books read this week, and it was fun to do my first reading vlog, and I'm excited to continue to do these. I would like it if you could just tell me something that you were up to this week, something that you're reading right now, any suggestions on what I should read in the future. If there's a book off of here that you think I should get to soon, just let me know.